But in any case, to talk about all of that, to break it down, I am now joined by Matt Christman. How are you doing today, Matt? And you are muted.
I don't do it this way, so I'm not used to it. Hello.
Hi, Matt. Uh, so, um, Obviously, I'm sure you're very excited because Joe Biden is president and he's going to do all kinds of great things, which we know since he says he will
We're all very, very pleased.
on his campaign website. And the way this works is that if somebody says they'll do something on their campaign website, they have to do it. Is that right?
That's law. That's in the Constitution.
Okay, cool, awesome. All right, so we'll get the public option and card check, and all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to all of that. Yeah, so I've been listening to some of your commentary on this from the grill stream and from Chapo, and it seems like not optimistic. Like you have, that's. I mean, I get this weird sense sometimes lately when I'm listening to this that I'm listening to something like that's sort of like this like very dark transcendental wisdom, like maybe like at the what the James Woods would be giving you at the end of Videodrome, something a little bit.
Yeah, don't be afraid to let your body die, folks.
Fair enough. Which I believe is actually the Biden campaign slogan.
Might as well be. I mean, long live the old flesh in his case.
Right. Yeah. So as part of that kind of breakdown, you've been talking about how American elections typically work in ways that maybe go beyond like even just the sort of specific dynamics of this race, which which is that, well, I won't put it quite the way you do because I'm a gentleman of impeccable manners, but that there's this kind of the culture war distinction that elections are increasingly fought over has to do with the difference between like seeing the trajectory of things right now. I mean, very dramatically right now because of coronavirus and everything else, but more generally, the neoliberal hellscape that we live in, and saying, don't, don't be too obnoxious about it, and seeing all of that, and saying, yeah, we have to accept it. Like both sides agree on that, but whatever. Like have some fun with it. Don't be a buzzkill.
Don't have fun with what?
Like so when you all right, let me back up a little bit, right? Try to see if I can clarify the thought, right? So thinking about like the sort of culture war in American elections, it seems like the distinction between people who like Trump and people who wanted Trump out has like very, very little to do with policy at this point.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with policy. There's no material base to American politics. I mean, obviously that's been a case for a long time. This is not new. This election did not make that case. In my opinion, the election has finally given us, at least me, an evidentiary basis to not be able to in any way imagine that there's material politics in this country in any way.
Yeah, so I mean, it's obvious enough why maybe like think that this election, the general election, wouldn't be really about material politics in any meaningful way. Nobody thinks that anything much is going to change. Probably most people who are excited about voting for Biden don't actually think that he's going to do any of the positive reforms that he says he will, because most people don't believe that politics can change anything.
Yes.
But then I guess maybe the larger question is whether there's like a larger way out of it, right? Because if you're a socialist and you have any kind of hope about the near to medium term future, it has to be based on thinking that there's something that we could potentially do to like depolarize depolarize politics from cultural lines and repolarize them on class lines, to convince people to vote to support a program that would actually benefit their material interest. That's the Bernie would have won case. But it sounds like you're no longer optimistic about that either.
There will be no convincing people. There's no pitching to people, because the people you're pitching to, they are processing your pitch through the lens of this two-party system, through the parties, not as you, as a college-educated person who has some idea of what the Democratic and Republican parties have traditionally stood for, is going to be thinking. They're going to be dealing with the parties as they exist in the current moment, which is as pure vessels for a battle about a bundle of cultural values that are learned in college, that are either accepted or rejected by those who go to college, and then are either accepted or rejected by those who become politically conscious to the point that they want to vote due to their exposure to these values in the ambient culture, which is produced exclusively by and for people who go to college, and then decide whether to adhere to them or reject them. And it has no basis in a material reality. No one who pitches material politics will have that material pitch be able to be heard above the cultural din. Any hope is going to come outside of the party structure, not done by anyone in a position to exercise political influence, because you are going to be doing that within a closed bubble, an epistemic cultural bubble, where whatever you're talking about, its material basis will be immediately, instinctively discarded by the people you're talking to, because of the bone deep awareness made by, not through ideology, but through lived experience, as people like to talk about, of this country not having a meaningful political, not having there be such a thing as a political power that can change any of the major arcs of misery in American life.
So when you say that it have to come out of the two-party structure, I mean, maybe I'm just being too like plotted and literalistic about this, but what could that mean? Do we even know right now what that could mean?
I have no idea what it means. Yeah, that's why people are saying I'm blackpilled now, because I'm saying, I'm sorry, if you're watching my streams or you're looking at the internet or whatever, you are in the bubble and there's nothing you can do. Now, that doesn't mean we're doomed. That doesn't mean there's nothing you might be able to do, but you're not going to be able to figure it out by looking into this crystal ball that we've convinced ourselves is the reality, that is really just a place where we all go to amuse ourselves. If you find a thing to do, if you find a step forward to take, it is not going to come from a program. It's not going to come from a candidate. It's not going to come from any aesthetically projected campaign. It's going to be a response to conditions in your life, and it is going to be a collaboration with people in your life.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Sure.
But it is
but
the
if it
only
happened,
viable path.
Right. So, I mean, maybe what I'm asking you to do here is just a performative contradiction, because you just said that we can't figure it out in this kind of way, right? But I guess I am curious about whether, what the gap is maybe between what you're saying now and what other people might be saying, or maybe stuff I heard you saying as recently as, I don't know, a month ago or something like that, right? Which is, okay, so, the Bernie thing, didn't happen. The calculation was that we could do things the other way around from what would normally make sense, that instead of having an organized working class and a movement and having an electoral politics that comes out of that, we could sort of jumpstart in a weird way in the opposite direction. And that didn't happen. And that was kind of a fluke that there was even the opportunity for that to maybe almost happen. So any sort of electoral prospects now would be much more low level. And I guess I'm curious about whether what you're saying now is basically still that, except with a little bit more pessimism mixed in about what our ability to even discover it or coordinate it outside of the most local things, or whether or whether you think that we're just not going to, like, we just kind of have to wait for something basic to change, and we just don't even know what that would be yet.
I mean, we're going to obviously have to wait for something to change, just because this is clearly a stalemate, and this is an inert populace politically, in a way that will not be directed, that cannot be directed. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that there's no way, because that things will significantly change politically. They will have to, because conditions will continue to deteriorate in this country, and people's lives will on a day-to-day basis be worse. And that, in a country that has an illusion of a democratic process, will lead people into politics. The question is how they will do it. If they continue to be funneled into the two-party system and into elections as they exist now, you will eventually see the thing that people are talking about, which is the Republican Party being the broadly working class party. But it will be a world where working class has no connection to experience, no connection to actual relationship to means of production or even income or any of those signifiers. It will be your acceptance or rejection of a bundle of social mores, which people at the shit end of the stick when it comes to distribution in this country are going to be less and less interested in investing in, meaning with.
Okay, so this gets down the distinction. I was trying to be too cute about it earlier, whatever. I think the joke flopped, but what you were talking about as this sort of like culture war positions, you characterized as don't be an asshole and don't be a pussy, right?
Right.
That, like, so don't be an asshole, meaning that you should that you should invest in some of these cultural mores, at least, like don't be incredibly racist, things like that. And don't be a pussy, meaning like don't be don't try to regulate my behavior. If we are on a sinking ship, like we can we can at least enjoy ourselves on this stinking ship, in the sense that we're not having our behavior regulated this way. We're at least maybe we're not wearing masks during COVID. We get to pretend at least that none of this is happening, right? We're having some fun with it on that level. In fact, this was in some ways that was Trump's closing argument in the election. He said that if you vote for the Democrats, you're voting for not having college graduation parties and weddings, and he lists off a bunch of things. That was kind of the pitch that I'm offering. Pretend that this isn't happening and continue to enjoy your life, which wasn't entirely unsuccessful, because obviously this is not like, we now know that Biden won, but I mean, this is not the blowout that it was supposed to be. Trump came amazingly close to winning.
Yeah, and he gained in every demographic except white males. And I think what we're seeing is that the Trump is abnormal pitch worked, in that it told suburban Republicans who vote Republican mostly out of class self-consciousness, but also because, due to the fact that they're aware of themselves as at the top of an economic hierarchy, they're not really interested in any kind of political party that demands that they surrender that position, or in the absence of surrendering it, feel bad about it, which is all liberals really are asking of wealthy people, is to feel bad about being rich, not be rich anymore. And they make the absolutely logical decision to say, why would if I'm going to be rich either way, why wouldn't I enjoy being rich? But they also absorb those college mores about things like, about norms and about the value of like a free press and electoral integrity, and the idea that something like COVID should be dealt with by the federal government with a certain degree of seriousness. And they saw that and they voted for Trump, voted for Biden, but only for Biden. They voted down ticket for Republicans because they had no investment in any project other than rebuking the personal figure of Trump as this uncouth being. And couthness was the revolving question. And as those suburban Republicans said, no, thank you, a lot of working class people who I haven't invested those things with meaning saw him and said, look, we're going to have Corona anyway. We're going to have economic crisis anyway. No one's getting a check. No one's getting anything. Why do I have to wear a mask? Why do I have to feel bad about not wearing a mask? And it's not just, why can I have fun? It's, it's textured. It's because everyone is alienated and miserable to some degree or another, even if they might be economically relatively well off, because nobody feels themselves that position. They only feel themselves relatively, and they feel, therefore, relative deprivation, even if they're absolutely privileged. So everyone is feeling some degree of unhappiness about the way that their life is not giving them what they wanted to. And the Trump pitch, the Republican pitch, the asshole pitch is you're pissed. If you're pissed, feel pissed, and here's people to be pissed at. And if you want to have a good time while you're pissed, here's something to do. Here, go to a party, go get some chicken wings. And why do you have to wear a damn mask?
Yeah, and again, like I think that I think I'm not even if on some level, I'm less. I've made the video drone breakthrough through less. I'm still trying to hold on to some idea that there is something that we can do to coordinate some kind of left strategy that might work, or at least might put us in a better position if something does change out of our control that changes conditions. But there is something that does have an ugly ring of truth to about this. I mean, like while I was listening to the stream where you're talking about this, I was walking the dog past, out in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, and passing a yard sign that was like "Vote Trump, make liberals cry," and I remember seeing another one earlier that was like the most like cloying sort of that yard sign with the list of all the liberal talking points, like one on top of each other, that belief science,
right.
Love is love,
welcome immigrants, all that stuff.
Yeah. Which as Thomas Frank points out in his new book, he talks about those signs in there. Conspicuously doesn't include anything that would have anything at all to do with, there's nothing about, somehow like raising the minimum wage or having healthcare or anything like that doesn't make it onto the list.
But even the stuff that does make it onto the list, they don't mean anything about. They don't intend to do anything about. To me, the line of the election was, and this was supposed to be the thing that was going to make it a landslide before COVID, was the kids in cages. And Trump's response was, you built the cages. And so many liberals were baffled by that. They were like, I don't get it. How can he say that? If he's saying they're bad, but he likes them, then why is it Biden's fault? What he is saying is cages come with the territory of being the United States at this point in time. And if they're going to be there, are we going to cry about them and pretend that we care? Or are we just going to accept that some things are necessary? And at the end of the day, both parties have a policy, are part of a greater agenda that necessitates savage immigration enforcement. And that will happen no matter what. So what the hell is the point of crying about it? And that is, I think, if you don't believe the liberal fairy tale, the propaganda tale that, well, we're trying our best and we're going to get there someday, and yes, it was unfortunate, but it's worse under him, and we'll be better under Biden. If you don't buy that implicitly because you have not absorbed and metabolized a system of values that you mostly have encountered because it helps you in the job market more than any wellspring of emotional connection to them as like felt and lived values, mostly just etiquette that is necessary to make it in a professional milieu, then you don't fucking care. And why should you? And that is the answer that none of them have. They say they should, and people should. And look at the response. Wow, we live in a racist country. These people should care more. And that's all they have. They are more black-pilled than anyone. Liberals are more black-pilled than anyone, because the response to this election has been, wow, I guess it's a worse country than I thought it was. With nothing even remotely conceivable to change the direction of that, other than to further demonstrate their own superiority to their countrymen as everything just continues to get worse. And that is not going to be a winning electoral message.
Yeah, well, and actually it's become even more of a parody of it. I remember earlier this week, like, I don't know, maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, there was an op-ed in the New York Times responding to a lot of the statistics you just mentioned about Trump. Charles Boyle, maybe, I don't know, one of those people, responding to a lot of the statistics you just mentioned about Trump actually increasing his vote share among all of these different categories of voters. That there were more black voters who voted for Trump, still a small minority, of course, but more of them, more women who voted for Trump, more gay people who voted for Trump. And literally, like, the op-ed is 90% just rattling off those statistics. And the last couple paragraphs is, wow, racism and the patriarchy are really powerful, and they pull in these people who are victims of them, and gosh, doesn't that make you think? So the response immediately was to default to the strategy is to call people bigots, and the strategy is even to call people who is even to call black voters and gay voters and all of these people bigots, which does go to the stalemate point, right? Because it's hard to imagine the person who thought this would work, right? That the scoldings will continue until the election results improve. I don't know that anybody really thinks that will work, but that doesn't really seem like the point, right? It's not that it's some attempt to get people to switch tribes and vote for Democrats. It's just kind of an attempt to signal allegiance to the values to the values of the tribe, and to make you feel better about the choices you've made. Which whatever. This is not new information. It's the same thing in 2016. When Hillary was calling Trump voters deplorables during the election, after the election, making a big deal about saying that people in well-educated, prosperous areas voted for her. That if your goal was to try to peel off whoever could be peeled off from the Trump voters, that obviously wouldn't work. But there's another question about what, if anything, would work right now, and I know, I think your position is just that that we don't know, right? That they have that maybe nothing right now, because in order to get some sort of big left breakthrough, the conditions around us would just have to change in some sort of way that we can't see right, going right now. But in maybe just the last few minutes that we have together, I wonder about this, because it does seem, and maybe this is just some part of my psyche trying to cling to whatever shards of hope that there are, pathetically. But it does seem like even in the results of the election, there is some evidence that there are people who could have been peeled off by, for example, a Bernie candidacy, like the fact that the $15 minimum wage won in Florida by more than Trump did.
Well, the problem there is that people don't vote for discrete issues. They vote for candidates for political parties. And the Democratic Party will never be a party of the aspirations of working people. Yes, Bernie would have done better, but Bernie didn't get the nomination. He was structurally incapable of getting the nomination, as we saw, because the people he pitched himself to in the primary were Democratic voters, which means that they have metabolized the capitalist realist notion that there is no change that is possible, which meant his entire material appeal basically went in one ear and out the other, and that the best we can do is to hold on to these cultural values, and that therefore, and beat Trump. And so therefore, he was a non-starter for a majority of Democratic primary voters. He had his chunk, he had his ceiling, which was higher than everybody's, or his floor support was higher than everybody's, but his ceiling was also very, very locked in by age and demographics. He needed to get in people who weren't paying attention and had not metabolized what the Democratic Party means in 2020. And he didn't get them. Now, considering how much money they spent on ads, I think that there could have been a world where they didn't spend a dime on advertising and put all that money into outreach, and maybe they're able to do something. But I think the ship has sailed now. And I think that with that, now there's no figure in the Democratic Party who can bring together issues that will in any way overcome the deep belief among the politically conscious people who you would need to appeal to get a nomination, that think change is really possible, or could cut through the intensely neurotic web of cultural signifiers that have to be kowtowed to before you can even get a hearing as a Democratic candidate anymore. So if there's going to be anything, it will not. Yes, there is of course, there's a dream in the human breast for something better in this country, but it will not be embodied by a Democratic politician.
So if it's not embodied, by a Democratic politician, and the structural barriers to certainly third party electoralism are, I mean, that just seems like even more deeply is something that's not going to happen. Then what are we left with? Like just some because it seemed like when these sort of Bernie and Corbyn moments were happening in the US and the UK, and whatever, we can argue about all the reasons why those were being back. I mean, I tend to think that if the Democratic establishment had been as dumb as the Republican establishment was in 2016, when they never did anything like consolidate behind Marco Rubio or somebody, that Bernie might have squeaked through in 2020. But whatever, they did learn their lesson, and that didn't happen. And now, as you say, right, it's hard to imagine there being a Bernie-like figure having that possibility again. And the third party thing seems like even more of a pipe dream. Well, I mean, when those moments were happening in the first place, it seemed like the way forward for the left was, okay, social democracy is obviously insufficient. You have to overcome capitalism, but you can at least start with social democracy and go somewhere for that. And that seemed like something that could happen electorally. And if that is, in your view, something that's basically off the table for the foreseeable future, does that mean that we need to kind of hope for something to happen non-electorally, that we...
I think what it's going to be is, if there's any hope, it's in people organizing as workers. I mean, that's obviously kind of, you say duh, because that's supposed to be the Marxist idea, and it still is. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just that what that has meant to people has been, in this deracinated and depoliticized country, trying to build something up through the institutions that people are familiar with, like through media figures, through the Democratic Party. But I think that the full cultural assimilation that has happened in terms of the way that people view politics conventionally means that anything that's going to be positive, anything that's going to be progressive, is going to be generated by people who do the math at their place of business, communicate to each other the condition of their labor, and find find a sense of autonomy and control over their lives through the application of a group pressure on employment. And that, because this is America, that very well might end up having a electoral expression, but it's not going to be a third party just being created out of the blue by a bunch of ex-Democrats or media figures or think tankers or podcasters or magazine writers, and it's not going to. It would be just an expression of an emergent and an emergent movement that is seeking to find a way to express itself in a national level.
Okay, I mean, I guess I want to, I want to believe that. I'm actually not sure if I do disagree with that. I mean, I think that the part that makes sense to me is saying that that maybe for the future of the left, electoral politics is downstream of workplace organizing.
Yeah.
And that just has to be the lesson, that okay, we can talk about maybe the Bernie thing would have gone differently if this had happened, or if that had happened, or the other thing had happened. But the basic reason that it was easy to defeat as it was is just that it was an honest reflection of the strength of the weakness of the left as it exists right now, and the way that it's easiest to imagine a stronger left, emerging in the future would be something that was like supervened on more workplace militancy and a revitalized or maybe even different kind of labor movement. I mean, I tend to think that the at least initial electoral expression of that would still, be within the Democratic Party, at least, just because the two-party system is so incredibly resilient in the United States. It's hard to imagine how you get another electorally viable party unless by some sort of weird thing happening where like one of the existing parties collapses like the Whigs did in the 19th century. But at that point, I guess we're just trading predictions. But meanwhile, I'm going to let you go. But just summing up, so everything is awesome. We should be very happy about everything that's happened this year. That that Joe Biden isn't perfect, but he could be moved to the left, and we'll get him
Cheeto is gone, and that's what matters.
Okay, that's what matters. Fair enough. All right, thanks, Matt. Always really appreciate it. Long live the new flesh.
Indeed. Bye-bye. Don't be afraid.